Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next hour. Donald Trump's war against drug trade continues as US imposes sanctions on Colombian President Petro. Also, Venezuela's Maduro accuses US of fabricating war. Kyiv allies urge more pressure on Moscow to end the conflict, while Putin's special envoy hints that Russia, US and Ukraine are close to diplomatic solution. US government shutdown hits day 24 with no deal in sight as the Senate stands adjourned for the weekend. Federal workers missing first full paycheck, flight services affected. India slams Pakistan at United Nations, calls upon Pakistan to end the grave and ongoing human rights violations in the areas illegally occupied by it. The US on Friday imposed sanctions on Colombian President Gustavo Petro, accusing him of failing to curb illicit drug trafficking and refusing to stop the flow of cocaine to the US. The US Treasury blacklisted Gustavo Petro, First Lady Veronica Alcocer, his eldest son Nicholas and Interior Minister Armando Benedetti, banning them from travel to the United States and freezing any US assets they hold. The action adds Petro to a list of world leaders under US sanctions, alongside Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, Russian President Vladimir Putin and others. Last weekend, Trump announced an end to hundreds of millions of dollars of US aid to Colombia and threatened tariffs on Colombian goods. Colombian president said he had sought to fight drug trafficking for decades. Gustavo Petro said sanctions on him were a paradox in a post on his social media on Friday. Petro said, "I have no desire and I never will to do business in the United States."
I've never done business. I don't have a dollar in the United States. There's no account to freeze. I have no desire and I never will to do business in the United States. That is why this gathering has an objective, which is not only to talk about Trump. We will not speak about him anymore in this government.
The Pentagon on Friday ordered the deployment of an aircraft carrier strike group to counter drug trafficking organizations in Latin America. The deployment is part of Trump's military buildup in the Caribbean, which includes 8 additional warships, a nuclear submarine and F-35 aircraft. The Gerald R. Ford, which was commissioned in 2017, is the United States' newest aircraft carrier and the world's largest, with more than 5,000 sailors aboard. Trump hasn't specified when the carrier will depart for the region. The carrier announcement came after Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said an overnight strike on a boat alleged to be operated by a Venezuelan drug trafficking gang to Nicaragua had killed 6 people in the Caribbean Sea. The deployment marks a significant escalation amid heightened tensions with Venezuela, whose government Washington has long accused of harboring drug traffickers and undermining democratic institutions. Meanwhile, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro said the US is making up an eternal war as the Trump administration announced a US military buildup in the Caribbean. Maduro defended Venezuela as a drug-free country, adding that Venezuela will put an end to the cocaine trafficking that comes from neighboring Colombia.
Se están inventando.
The people of the United States know it. They are making up a new eternal war. They promised that they will never enter a war, and they are making up a war that we will avoid. With the mobilization of the people of South America, as South America and the Caribbean all say no to war, yes to peace, yes to prosperity, yes to harmony and living together.
Venezuela released 18 Colombians on Friday after month-long negotiations with the government of Gustavo Petro in an emotional encounter with their loved ones. Families rushed to hug the Colombians who were released at an international bridge between the two countries in Norte de Santander, accompanied by Colombia's Foreign Minister Rosa Villavicencio. Vicencio said there were some fellow nationals still detained in Venezuela and that her administration would continue talks with President Nicolas Maduro's government to set them free. The diplomat also said the Colombians released did not have any judicial proceedings in Venezuela, according to a statement. Among the detainees still held in Venezuela, estimated at more than 40 in total, there is an employee of the Danish Refugee Council who was detained in September 2024. And thousands of supporters rallied in Bogota's Bolivar Square to back President Petro after the United States imposed sanctions on the Colombian leader, escalating tensions between the longtime allies. At the demonstration, supporters carried banners reading, "Thank you, President Petro, for your legacy, and Petro is not a drug trafficker." Police checked attendees at security checkpoints as crowds streamed into the square, some waving Colombian flags while a drum band played. The move marks a sharp deterioration in the relations as US military activity has increased in the southern Caribbean, where Trump accusing Petro of allowing drug cartels to flourish. All right, shifting focus now. As part of efforts to pressure Russian President Vladimir Putin to end the conflict, more than 20 nations supporting Ukraine have pledged to take Russian oil and gas off the global market. While Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who visited London, urged Kiev's allies on Friday to introduce sanctions against all Russian oil companies, its shadow fleet and oil terminals to disrupt Moscow's ability to fund its conflict in Ukraine.
Peace is born from pressure on the aggressor, and that is what we must continue to do.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that the country is determined to act now to dial up the pressure on Putin.
Future is our future. What happens in the weeks and months ahead is pivotal for the security of the United Kingdom and all our allies across NATO and beyond. So we are determined to act now, to dial up the bring him to the negotiating table in good faith.
Also, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte agreed to significantly increase the pressure on Putin to come to the negotiating table. He also said that in Ukraine, Putin is gaining little ground on the battlefield and there are marginal gains.
Sanctions that the US has placed against Russia's largest oil companies will starve them of revenue and significantly increase the pressure on Putin to come to the negotiating table. And they show once again that President Trump is absolutely committed to end this war and bring a lasting peace to Ukraine.
European Union leaders agreed to meet Ukraine's pressing financial needs for the next 2 years, but stopped short of endorsing a plan to use frozen Russian assets to fund a giant loan to Kiev over Belgian concerns. Although Moscow has promised a painful response if the assets are seized, Putin also said the sanctions on oil companies were an unfriendly act but would not significantly affect the Russian economy. Russian President Vladimir Putin's special envoy for investment and economic cooperation, Kirill Dmitriev, said on Friday that he believes his country, the United States and Ukraine are close to a diplomatic solution to end Russia's conflict in Ukraine. On his arrival in Washington for talks with US officials, Dmitriev said that a meeting between Donald Trump and Putin had not been cancelled, as the US president described it, and that the two leaders will likely meet at a later date. The planned summit was put on hold on Tuesday as Russia's rejection of an immediate ceasefire cast a cloud over attempts at negotiations. Trump said he cancelled the planned meeting with Putin in Budapest because of lack of progress in diplomatic efforts towards ending the war and a sense that the timing was off. All right, DD India Shubhendu Ghosh joins us for more. Hi, Shubhendu. President Zelensky has been urging for tougher sanctions, and more than 20 nations supporting Ukraine have in fact pledged to take Russian oil and gas off the global market. Tell us, how significant is this news development and what's the response been so far?
Hello, Abhishek. Yes, there appears to be a growing momentum to pivot the Russia-Ukraine conflict around energy diplomacy, taking cue from what President Trump did a few days ago, putting sanctions on two of Russia's big oil giants who supply about 6% of global oil supply. The European allies in the West are also coming together. More than 20 of them, pledging greater support in removing Russian oil energy from the global markets. But that's easier said than done. There is no clear timeline as to when it can be done. We were just looking at some data. We see that Europe itself, which has been traditionally heavily dependent on Russian oil and gas before this conflict started, it has been every year trying to cut down on the use of Russian oil and gas, has not been able to completely cut off its dependence on Russia. About 3% of the oil that Europe uses, it is claiming to cut off the global supply, but 3% of the oil that Europe uses comes from Russia now. Earlier it was 27%. The gas dependence is even significant. Earlier 45% of energy, gas supply, LNG in Europe was coming from Russia. They've cut it down, but it's still upwards of 13%, and very harsh winters are now approaching in the region as well. So the pledge, the claim seems a significant one, but there is no clear timeline as to how and when it can be implemented. All of it, we understand, is aimed at bringing Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table as far as concluding the Russia-Ukraine conflict is concerned. But we'll have to wait and watch what kind of reactions coming in from Russia, because so far they've brushed aside any threats of sanctions, saying that they can manage it as they have been able to in the past.
Right, we'll have to wait and watch, and how practical is it, we'll get to know in the coming days. But Shubhendu, Russia's envoy says talks with the US and Ukraine are progressing and they are close to diplomatic solution. Is there any clarity on what form this possible diplomatic solution, as he's calling it, might take?
Abhishek, that's an odd unilateral claim that seems to have come from the Russian envoy. He's an economic envoy to the United States. But if you look at the context, it could also symbolize the manner in which Russia is also looking at how things are developing at this point in time. There is a visible disenchantment that President Trump of US has expressed towards Putin and Russia. Russia has been banking on a certain visible difference that had occurred between the United States and the European allies vis-a-vis support to Ukraine is concerned, but that difference seems to be melting into some sort of a convergence as far as targeting Russia's oil infrastructure, oil trade is concerned, which continues to be one of the most lucrative resources for Russia. So these could also be important feelers that Russia would like to give away, that it is not completely sort of disconnected with the context. It does want to negotiate, perhaps even work towards a ceasefire, and therefore really highlighting the role that perhaps US could play in this conflict. But no details as of now, Abhishek, as to who else is on the board in this visible thaw.
Also, Shubhendu, talking about Russia, Putin said the sanctions on oil companies were an unfriendly act but would not significantly affect the Russian economy. Moscow, in fact, has warned of a painful response if the assets are seized. How is that being perceived by the European leaders?
2 points to that quickly, Abhishek. One is, look at the kind of language that is being used. First, the oil sanctions that come from America. To that, they're saying it's not going to be, Putin says it's not going to be as significant. Russia will continue with business as usual. However, as far as the threat of freezing Russian assets is concerned, which was to be done by Europe, particularly the financial assets located in Belgium in Europe, there it says it could in fact lead to serious escalation. It would be seen as a threat to Russia. So also Putin, a clear demarcation in the manner in which he looks at US opposition and European opposition. But Russia, we see President Putin continues to present a strongman show, maximalist approach, that Russia is not bothered by these steps taken by the adversaries. To the question of long-range missiles being made available to Zelensky and Ukraine, it had clearly said that would be seen as a major escalation. But so far, the act about freezing the Russian assets, that has not worked out for Europe. It remains divided. The litigation issues around it,
The decision has been postponed to December this year. And for now, the harsh winter approaches in the region. And we'll have to wait and watch if nothing else, if nature can push the two sides onto the negotiating table in the coming days.
All right, Shubhendu, we'll leave it at that. Thank you for getting us those inputs on that story. Still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. In Israel, top US diplomat Marco Rubio expresses optimism around the Gaza deal. Madagascar strips off ousted President Rajoelina's nationality. And EU businesses say things are getting better, except in France. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Some more stories. Top US diplomat Marco Rubio voiced hope on Friday of soon putting together an international force to police the ceasefire in Gaza as Palestinian factions agreed that a committee of independent technocrats would run the post-war territory. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said an international security force to be put in place in Gaza under a ceasefire agreement will have to be made up of countries that Israel is comfortable with. Rubio added that the future of governance in Gaza still needs to be worked out among Israel and partner nations, but could not include Hamas, adding that any potential role for the Palestinian Authority has yet to be determined.
We haven't formed that force yet, so there's still work going on. There's a lot of countries that are offered to do it. Obviously, as you put together this force, it'll have to be people that Israel's comfortable, or countries that Israel's comfortable with as well. Let me just say that I think there are a lot of countries that are expressing interest right now. We're not going to forget about the hostages. We push every single day, and we'll continue to push until the remains of every single hostage is returned. Work is going on. Even as I speak to you now, that's being pushed on. That's not something we're going to start talking about. We fully expect that Hamas will fully demilitarize. That is the agreement they signed on to. That is the agreement that all of the nation states that joined this effort signed on to, and we expect it to be fulfilled.
As the ongoing US shutdown continues with no deal in sight, more flights to be delayed, with air traffic controllers set to miss their first paycheck as the federal government shutdown enters its 24th day. Some 13,000 air traffic controllers and about 50,000 transportation security administration officers must work without pay during the government shutdown. Airlines are bracing for more disruptions. In 2019, during a 35-day shutdown, the number of absences by controllers and TSA officers rose as workers missed paychecks, extending wait times at some airport checkpoints. Authorities were forced to slow air traffic in New York and Washington. The FAA is about 3,500 air traffic controllers short of targeted staffing levels, and many had been working mandatory overtime and 6-day weeks even before the shutdown. And hundreds of furloughed and unpaid federal workers lined up outside a Washington, D.C. food bank as U.S. government shutdown hits day 24 with no deal in sight as the Senate stands adjourned for the weekend. The shutdown has left about 700,000 federal workers furloughed, while nearly as many are working without pay, which could force households to defer spending. The Trump administration has warned of potential mass firings, escalating tensions in the ongoing standoff. For workers waiting in the line, the sense of uncertainty was palpable. Many said they were proud to serve their country, but admitted it was difficult to do so while struggling to feed their families. And countries signed their first UN treaty targeting cybercrime in Hanoi despite opposition from an unlikely ban of tech companies and rights groups warning of expanded state surveillance. The new global legal framework aims to strengthen international cooperation to fight digital crimes, from child abuse to transnational cyber scams and money laundering. Vietnam's president has described the signing as a historic milestone. Whereas other leaders have lauded the move, the UN Convention Against Cybercrime was first proposed by Russian diplomats in 2017 and approved by consensus last year after lengthy negotiations. Critics say its broad language could lead to abuses of power and enable the cross-border repression of government critics. And US President Donald Trump reversed a Biden-era air pollution rule that had imposed stricter limits on emissions from copper smelters. The copper rule, finalized in May 2024, had required smelters to curb pollutants under updated federal air standards. Trump's proclamation grants a 2-year exemption from compliance for affected stationary sources, which the White House said would help promote American mineral security by reducing regulatory burdens on domestic copper producers. The U.S. currently has only 2 copper smelters, one in Arizona and the other in Utah. Trump signed an executive order earlier this year that identified copper as a critical material for defense, infrastructure and emerging technologies, including clean energy and electric vehicles. It led to a Section 232 investigation to determine whether copper imports threaten U.S. national security, particularly due to dependence on a small number of foreign suppliers. Following the review, the administration imposed a 50% tariff on certain imported copper and mandated that an increasing percentage of high-quality scrap copper produced in the U.S. be sold domestically. Now, China and the United States began their latest round of trade talks in Malaysia on Saturday ahead of a closely watched meeting between their 2 leaders in South Korea. The world's 2 biggest economies are seeking to avoid further escalating a damaging tit-for-tat tariff war, with US President Donald Trump expected to meet his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in South Korea next Thursday. Beijing announced this month sweeping controls on the critical rare earth industry, prompting Trump to threaten 100% tariffs on imports from China in retaliation. The 2 countries also began charging arrival fees on each other's ships, sparked by a U.S. Section 301 investigation that found Beijing's dominance in the industry was unreasonable. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump departs from the United States to attend the 47th ASEAN Leaders Summit in Kuala Lumpur. Trump is due to arrive in Kuala Lumpur on Sunday morning on the first stop of his trip through Asia for talks with China.
Well, I'll be talking about Taiwan. Won't be going there, but I'll be talking about it. Won't be too far away. A lot of respect for Taiwan.
And Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng and top trade negotiator Li Chenggang arrived at a venue in Kuala Lumpur for trade talks between the United States and China. Top economic officials from the United States and China are meeting in the Malaysian capital on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit. They will work to de-escalate a trade war ahead of a planned meeting next week between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Washington and Beijing have hiked tariffs on each other's exports and threatened to cut off trade in critical minerals and technologies altogether. And Malaysian authorities ramped up security measures in Kuala Lumpur for the ASEAN summit. Security personnel were seen conducting thorough checks at all entry points to the venue of the summit, Kuala Lumpur Convention Centre. The 3-day summit, set to begin on Sunday, will bring together leaders from 10-member bloc and dialogue partners, including the United States and China. The summit comes at a critical time as the region grapples with tensions in the South China Sea, the ongoing crisis in Myanmar, and efforts to strengthen economic integration amid global trade uncertainties. Meanwhile, Thai Prime Minister cancelled his trip to the ASEAN summit in Malaysia due to Queen Mother's death. The cabinet will meet on Saturday to discuss a royal funeral. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said on Friday that the country stands ready to resume trade talks with the United States that President Donald Trump halted over an anti-tariff advertisement issued by Ontario's provincial government. Trump terminated the talks on Thursday over the video, which used Republican icon former President Ronald Reagan, saying tariffs caused trade wars and economic disaster. In a late-night social media post, Trump called the ad fraudulent. Carney has tried on two White House visits since becoming Prime Minister to strike a deal to lower import tariffs on steel, aluminium and autos imposed by Trump have hurt Canada's economy. Despite Carney's overture to revive US stocks, Ontario Premier Doug Ford said he ordered the ads to keep running during the weekend's Baseball World Series games between the Toronto Blue Jays and Los Angeles Dodgers to reach a bigger US audience. Now, Ireland voted on Friday to elect a new president, with left-wing independent Catherine Connolly expected to beat her challenger in an election critics say failed to offer a real choice, hitting turnout. Conservative figures urged voters to spoil their ballots in protest at the lack of right-wing options in the contest, which pitted Connolly against centrist Fine Gael's Heather Humphreys. Poll results are expected on late Saturday. Experts forecast a low overall turnout this time because of frustration with the choice of just two candidates. A recent poll suggested 49% of voters did not feel represented by either of them. Connolly, a lawmaker since 2016 and supported by left-wing parties including Sinn Féin, has surged ahead in opinion polls in recent weeks. European businesses reckon things are getting better, except in France, where political turmoil continues to sting economically. Credit ratings agency Moody's on Friday revised France's outlook to negative from stable, citing increased risk from political fragmentation, which could continue to undermine the effectiveness of the country's legislative institutions. Moody's, in a statement, warned that political instability may hinder the government's ability to tackle key policy challenges, including a high fiscal deficit, mounting debt levels and persistently elevated borrowing cost. France's long-term foreign currency sovereign credit rating was affirmed at AA3. The country has been roiled by political infighting since snap elections were called last year, leading to parliamentary deadlock that has hampered efforts at financial reform and increased borrowing cost. Now, Madagascar's new government has ousted President Andry Rajoelina of his Malagasy nationality in a decree published on Friday. Media reports said 10 days after he was removed in a military takeover. The decree means that Rajoelina, who was impeached on October 14 after fleeing the island nation in the wake of weeks of protests, would not be able to contest future elections. The decree published in the official gazette said Rajoelina's Malagasy nationality was revoked because he had acquired French nationality in 2014. Local media reported as photographs of the document were shared online. The decree cited laws stipulating that a Malagasy who voluntarily acquires a foreign nationality loses their Malagasy nationality. Now, Thailand's Queen Mother Sirikit passed away at the age of 93 in a Bangkok hospital on Friday night, the Thai Royal Household Bureau announced. The Queen Mother played an important part for decades in helping to revive the power and prestige of the monarchy alongside her husband, the late King Bhumibol Adulyadej. After a stroke in July 2012, Queen Sirikit disappeared from public life. From 2014 till her death, she was treated in Bangkok hospitals. Sirikit brought a touch of glamour as an internationally feted fashion trendsetter in the post-World War II decades and became a champion of rural development. But she also courted controversy with political statements in later years. The mother of current King Maha Vajiralongkorn, Sirikit was also officially celebrated as a maternal figure for Thailand, with her birthday marked as Mother's Day. Tropical storm Melissa is expected to rapidly intensify into a major hurricane this weekend. Storm Melissa could be the strongest hurricane ever to hit Jamaica. Rain has already been pounding parts of Haiti and the Dominican Republic for several days, flooding roadways and triggering landslides. After Melissa rose in Jamaica, Cuba is likely to be the next country in the storm's path. Eastern Cuba could face destructive winds and flooding rain from Melissa by midweek. The United States mainland is not completely out of the woods, but a direct hit looks unlikely. Even so, rough surf and rip currents could spread along the U.S. East Coast next week. Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. Over 400 people, including police and families, are searching the Ajusco Mountains near Mexico City for over 100 missing individuals. The massive operation involves firefighters, volunteers, and the Missing Persons Search Commission. Mexico faces a growing crisis with more than 127,000 people reported missing nationwide amid drug-related violence. Traditional garments from Malatya, Turkey were recreated from old photographs and showcased in a fashion show titled From Yesterday to Today. The project by Yesil Yurt Public Education Center trainees revived local attire through modern adaptations. The event also featured traditional handicrafts and artworks that drew strong public interest. Paris' iconic Pompidou Center transformed into a vibrant nightclub and art hub for a two-day event called Because Bebord. The celebration, featuring 80 artists and over 39 concerts, marks the center's closure for a 5-year renovation. All 8 floors open to the public for the first time, offering screenings, performances and masterclasses. And French rapper Riles is marking his new album, The 25th Hour, with a 24-hour signing marathon in Paris. He plans to hand-stamp 20,000 discs with a red-painted palm print, each uniquely numbered and signed. This follows his earlier 24-hour non-stop run, reflecting his passion for endurance and creativity. Time now for another short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal interacts with the vibrant Indian community in Berlin on his Germany visit. The 4-day grand festival of Chhath Puja begins today with a traditional ritual of Nahai Khai. And EC issues fresh guidelines on AI and synthetic content use in poll campaigns.
Indian industries are facing pressure because of President Trump's tariff threats.
Even tariffs are part of the story, actually. If you were to look at the whole story of the de-industrialization of India, it began in many ways under the British rule. They say, oh, it's not our fault. India fell behind because you missed the bus for the Industrial Revolution. My answer is we missed the bus is because you threw us under its wheels.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Recap of our top stories. Trump's war against drug trade continues as US imposes sanctions on Colombian President Petro. Also, Venezuela's Maduro accuses US of fabricating war. Kiev allies urge more pressure on Moscow to end the conflict, while Putin's special envoy hints that Russia, US and Ukraine are close to diplomatic solution. US government shutdown hits day 24 with no deal in sight as the Senate stands adjourned for the weekend. Federal workers missing first full paycheck, flight services affected. And India slams Pakistan at United Nations, calls upon Pakistan to end the grave and ongoing human rights violations in the areas illegally occupied by it. India once again slammed Pakistan at the United Nations. India's permanent representative to the United Nations, Parvatneni Harish, called upon Pakistan to end the grave and ongoing human rights violations in the areas illegally occupied by it.
Finally, I refer to the statement of the representative of Pakistan. Let me emphasize that the Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir has been, is and will always be an integral and inalienable part of India. The people of Jammu and Kashmir exercise their fundamental rights in accordance with India's time-tested democratic traditions and constitutional framework. We of course know that these are concepts alien to Pakistan. We call upon Pakistan to end the grave and ongoing human rights violations in the areas illegally occupied by it, where the population is in open revolt against Pakistan's military occupation, repression, brutality and illegal exploitation of resources. Madam President, we see the world as one family, a vision enshrined in our civilizational ethos of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This is not only an outlook that anchors our worldview, but also the reason why India has consistently advocated for justice, dignity, opportunity and prosperity for all societies and peoples. It's also the reason why India places its faith in multilateralism, international partnerships and cooperation. India has always stood with our brothers and sisters from the global south and will continue to help with our expertise and long-standing experience across all domains. I urge all member states to come together and join hands towards realizing this vision for making the UN fit for purpose for the new era.
While addressing the United Nations Security Council during the open debate, he reiterated that Jammu and Kashmir will always be an integral and inalienable part of India. The ambassador said that while the people in the region exercise their fundamental rights, such concepts are alien to Pakistan. With an aim to deepen Indo-German trade, our strategic partnership marks 25 years. Union Minister of Commerce and Industry Piyush Goyal interacted with the vibrant Indian community in Berlin. The minister called upon them to continue being partners in India's growth and catalyst for deeper India-Germany ties. And during his visit, Union Minister Piyush Goyal met Siemens Energy member of the Executive Board and Lord Parikal de Shamar and had discussions focused on deepening collaboration for building more reliable, affordable and sustainable energy systems. He praised the company's expertise in reducing emissions across the energy landscape aligns well with India's clean energy transition and growth ambitions. He also met the leadership of Federation of German Industries. They discussed strategic initiatives to further strengthen Indo-German trade relations, deepen industrial collaboration and enhance the role of our businesses in shaping the future of global trade. The leader also interacted with President of International for Bank of America, Bernard Mensah, and discussed ways to deepen India-US financial cooperation, expand investment and how ongoing reforms and a conducive business environment are strengthening investor confidence in India. And continuing his high-level engagements in Germany's capital Berlin, Union Minister Piyush Goyal addressed the Berlin Global Dialogue on Friday, underscoring India's role as a trusted partner in global trade and emphasizing the need for deeper industrial and technology collaborations.
Decision whether to buy a particular product from a country is something that the entire world will have to take a call on. So I was reading in today's paper, Germany is asking for exemption from US sanctions on oil. Now these are UK already has sorted and probably got an exemption for procuring oil from the US.
This is about the Rosneft deal, sanctions, I think, and we've sorted out the issues with Germany. We managed to do that very quickly, and I think the Americans will do something very similar.
So then why single out India?
And Bharatiya Janata Party MP Bansuri Swaraj and former Union Minister Vijay Goyal gave away the annual International Tourism, Travel and Hospitality Awards 2025 at the Ashok Hotel in New Delhi. Atul Bhalla ITC Hotels received the Best Hotelier of the Year award. Radisson Hotel Group received the Best Business Hotel Chain. Best Wedding Resort of the Year went to JW Marriott Mussoorie. Radisson Blue Plaza, Delhi Airport received the Best Airport Luxury Hotel. Best Casino in South Asia award was given to Casino Mahjong, Nepal. Organized by Hospitality India magazine and guide, the award celebrated its 20th anniversary, recognizing leaders and innovators in the global tourism, travel and hospitality sectors. Addressing the event, Bansuri Swaraj discussed about the recently held Travis Scott concert in Delhi. She also noted PM Modi's concept of concert economy in boosting India's growth.
हाल ही में आपने देखा होगा ट्रैविस स्कॉट का एक बहुत बड़ा कॉन्सर्ट हुआ दिल्ली में। आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने कॉन्सर्ट इकोनॉमी का एक कॉन्सेप्ट लाकर हम सबके सामने खड़ा करा है। ऑफ कोर्स विद ड्यू क्रेडिट टू द आर्टिस्ट, ये कॉन्सर्ट इकोनॉमी आप लोगों के योगदान के बिना असंभव है। आपने देखा होगा जेएनएल स्टेडियम में एक ट्रैविस स्कॉट का होता है कॉन्सर्ट एंड मैक्सिमम ऑक्यूपेंसी जो है वो दिल्ली के होटल्स में आती है बिकॉज 70% ऑफ द क्राउड वाज ऑफ किड्स हु हैड एक्चुअली ट्रैवल्ड फ्रॉम ऑल अक्रॉस इंडिया.
The ambassador of Cuba to India, Juan Carlos Marsan Aguera, spoke to Daily India's Tanvi Taneja at the International Tourism, Travel and Hospitality Awards 2025. function in New Delhi. The ambassador and his wife promoted Cuba as a tourist destination at the event, calling people of both countries spiritual who have a desire to build a better world. Take a listen.
So we are at the 20th International Travel, Tourism and Hospitality Awards, and with me is Cuban ambassador to India, Mr. Juan Aguilera, and his wife has also graced us here at the event, Mikey. Sir, yes, the event is yet to start, but there is a great presence of renowned hoteliers here. What are you looking forward to at the event?
Well, it's an opportunity being here today because it's an opportunity to meet many people, especially for this sector. Tourism is one of the sectors we are looking forward in order to promote more cooperation between India and Cuba. You know, India and Cuba has a very historical relations. We are celebrating 65 years of bilateral diplomatic relations right this year, 2025. And we would like to continue growing the number of Indians that go to Cuba to discover this beautiful place. Also, we have a really rich culture in all the different manifestations, in paintings, in theater, in classic music, in ballet, and the people couldn't visit Cuba to enjoy it as well.
Have you, seen some arts, crafts, cinema you would want to talk about that you really liked?
Well, a special one film that was performance in Cuba, Ekta Tiger.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes,
okay.
was by Salman and Katrina, of course, both. And always, when I used to promote Cuba here, I played the short video of them in Cuba, enjoying the Cuban cocktails, playing domino, visiting Havana, all cards, everything. And I said to the people, you can do the same.
Anything about India that you really like and would want Cubans to also come here as a tourist destination?
Well, I think that India is very close to Cuba in many things. We have a rich culture. Cuban people and Indian people are very spiritual, and we are both lands with a lot of colors and happiness and desire to build a better world. Yes. And in this case, Indian people can find in Cuba many modalities of tourism, like Ambassador explained, and for sure, all of Indians will be very warm welcome in Cuba.
Oh, lovely. Yes, building a better world, as Mikey said, we are all here to build more ties and bring our tourism industry of both countries to greater heights. With the camera person Rahul Chopra, this is Tanvi Taneja for DD India. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks to you. Thank you.
And campaigning has gained momentum ahead of the assembly elections in Bihar. Prime Minister Modi held two back-to-back rallies in Samastipur and Begusarai on Friday and lambasted the RJD Congress alliance over Jungle Raj, holding them responsible for pushing the state into darkness. At Samastipur, he invoked the legacy of socialist icon and Bharat Ratna, the late Karpuri Thakur. The next report by our correspondents on the ground examines what the Prime Minister said in detail.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday entered the political battlefield of Bihar, choosing Karpuri Gram, the ancestral village of Bharat Ratna Jananayak Karpuri Thakur in Samastipur district, to kickstart his election campaign. Upon arrival, the PM first paid floral tributes at the memorial of Karpuri Thakur, remembering the former chief minister as a true leader of the poor and marginalized. He lauded Thakur's lifelong efforts for the upliftment of backward and oppressed communities, saying his contributions will always be remembered. Addressing a massive rally in Samastipur, Prime Minister Modi launched sharp attack on the opposition from the very land of Karpuri Thakur.
और जो जमानत पे है वो चोरी के मामले में जमानत पे है। अब ये चोरी की इनकी आदत ऐसी है कि अब जननायक की उपाधि की चोरी में जुटे हैं। बिहार के लोग जननायक कर्पूरी बाबू का ये अपमान कभी नहीं सहेंगे।
Continuing his address, the Prime Minister reaffirmed the NDA government's commitment to good governance and development. Taking a direct swipe at RJD leader Lalu Prasad Yadav, PM invoked Bihar's difficult past, reminding people of the era of Jungle Raj.
ये लठबंधन वाले जिन लोगों को चुनाव लड़वा रहे हैं उससे साफ हो जाता है कि ये पुराने दिन वापस लाना चाहते हैं। अभी से आरजेडी कांग्रेस के लोग छर्रा, कट्टा, दूनाली और घर से उठा लेने की धमकी देने लग गए हैं।
The Prime Minister's next stop was Begusarai, where he once again took on the opposition. Attacking the Grand Alliance, he described it as a combination of stuck, hesitant, suspended, and poked parties, suggesting that the alliance is driven by confusion and self-interest, not public welfare.
बीते 2 दशक में कोई चुनाव नहीं जीती, लेकिन अपने अहंकार में अटकी हुई है। इसी अहंकार में इन्होंने जेएमएम को झटक दिया। कांग्रेस 35 साल से बिहार में आरजेडी की पिछलग्गू बनी हुई है। इस बार आरजेडी ने उसको फिर पटक दिया।
Reiterating his confidence in Chief Minister Nitish Kumar's leadership, Prime Minister Modi said the NDA will break all previous records of victory in Bihar. He expressed hope that the people of the state will give the alliance its biggest ever mandate, a historic win built on trust, governance, and development. The Prime Minister's rallies in Samastipur and Begusarai have set the tone for the NDA's campaign in Bihar as the state gears up for a high-stake electoral battle. With inputs from Kumar Alok, Rajesh Raj, and Dheeraj from Bihar, Bureau Report, DD India.
And the Election Commission of India on Friday issued an advisory to all political parties on the use of AI-generated and synthetic content during elections. The ECI warned that deepfakes or altered content could mislead voters and disrupt. Parties must ensure all AI-generated material is clearly labelled to maintain transparency and electoral integrity. Now, the 4-day grand festival of Chhath Puja begins today with the traditional ritual of Nahai Khai. On this day, devotees take a holy dip in rivers, ponds or other water bodies such as the Ganga or local streams, symbolizing the purification of body and soul. Devotees and worshippers gathered along river banks and taking holy dips. To ensure the best experience for devotees observing the Chhath Puja, fasting and offering argh, which means offering to the sun, the preparations were done by the Delhi government at around 1,000 sites across New Delhi, including the development of 17 model ghats. Embankments are being built alongside the river to create a seamless experience. For security, wooden barricades have been installed along the banks of the Yamuna River. And Prime Minister Modi extended his greetings on the first day of Chhath Puja celebrations. In a post on X, he wrote, and I quote him here, "With the sacred ritual of Nahai Khai, the 4-day grand festival of Chhath is commencing auspiciously from today. My heartfelt best wishes to the devotees across the country, including Bihar. My salutations and homage to all the observers of the fast." Unquote. All right, still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. We'll get you updates on third ODI between India and Australia match. And Alaska Airlines restores operations after tech outage.
Jharkhand will mesmerize you with majestic nature, rich heritage and colorful culture.
Johar. It fits perfectly.
Thank you.
Full workout हो गया.
Ready?
Postcards from Jharkhand on National Geographic.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Some more stories. US carrier Alaska Airlines said it had restored operations after a technology outage that grounded flights across the country and forced it to cancel more than 400 flights, disrupting travel for more than 49,000 passengers. Alaska Air Group said it planned to take immediate actions to upgrade its IT systems after the failure at its primary data center, adding it did not yet have an estimate of the financial impact the disruption may have on its fourth quarter results. All right, sports updates now. We'll start with the third ODI between India and Australia. Australia got off to a brisk start after electing to bat against India in the third and final one-day international in Sydney. Skipper Mitchell Marsh and Travis Head shared a 61-run partnership for the opening wicket in 10 overs. Head was dismissed for 29 runs, while Marsh fell for 41. The hosts were 133 runs for the loss of 3 wickets. As the last reports came in, earlier India made 2 changes in the playing 11. Kuldeep Yadav and Prasidh Krishna come in for Arshdeep Singh and Nitish Kumar Reddy. For Australia, Nathan Ellis was included in place of Javier Bartlett. Australia lead the 3-match series 2-0. All right, let's go across to DD India's Deepika Mehto. She joins us live from the newsroom. Hi, Deepika. Australia have opted to bat here at Sydney. They started off well, but India, you think, clawed back well. Things in control for India with 3 wickets?
Good morning, Abhishek. India yet again lost the toss once more, and this time, third time in a row if we talk about the ODI series. And however, Australia has a lead with a 2-0 victory, 2-0 scoreline here, but India is also aiming to win this time in order to avoid a complete whitewash, which may happen after 41 years. But when we talk about the changes that we've seen so far, the 2 changes India has made, Kuldeep Yadav was always asked about that why Kuldeep Yadav has not been included in the playing 11, because when you need to balance both the departments, which is the bowling and the batting, Kuldeep Yadav has to be there if other crucial players are missing from the playing 11 and if they are playing other important matches. So in the end, coach has decided to add Kuldeep Yadav to the playing 11, and we can see the changes. 3 wickets are already down for Team Australia, and they are actually struggling against Team India. If we look at the current score, it was just a minute ago 132 for a loss of 3 wickets. So looking at the pace right now, the kind of bowling India is doing, the kind of fielding India is doing, looks like a strong performance. However, there are still questions on Prasidh and why he has been included, because you would remember the fact that when he admitted his mistake, that he was responsible for what happened in Edgbaston in the month of June this year. So here the inclusion of both the players is not really being optimistically received by the fans. However, Kuldeep Yadav's inclusion was very much demanded by all the fans and the experts, but there are questions on the other inclusion. But so far the match is looking strong in India's favour. Remains to be seen how Team India is going to pan throughout the day, and if they can seal today's victory in order to maintain their pride and win this match just to avoid a whitewash against
Australia. Absolutely, Deepika. India playing for pride today at Sydney. They have already lost the series, but again, Deepika, focus will be on Virat Kohli again when India will come on to bat. Big game for him.
And interestingly, Abhishek, the stadium is sold out. Though there are questions on the playing 11, though there are questions on India's performance ahead of the T20 series as well. And there are questions on the captaincy of Shubman Gill in the ODI series. But still, there is a sea of blue which is supporting Virat Kohli, because this may be his last ODI appearance, and especially at this particular pitch, at this particular stadium, which is the Sydney Cricket Ground, because another match against Australia at this particular pitch where we may see Team India playing will come in 2027 Cricket World Cup. So we are seeing a sold out stadium today, and fans have come in large numbers to support Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma as well, because both of them are making the appearance, and this is somewhere around 341st appearance for both of them, which is the joint highest when we talk about it. And not only this, Virat Kohli is just 53 runs away to become the second Indian batter to score the highest run in the ODI format, and fans are eagerly waiting for him to create yet another record. But his gesture in the second ODI, in which again Team India lost, was really different, and that put a lot of question marks on his involvement, on his retirement as well in the ODI, because he's already retired from other formats, but ODI still remains the key contention. But again, his gestures have raised a lot of questions, so fans have come in a large number to support Virat Kohli and see him in action one more time in the ground at Sydney today. So let's see how Virat Kohli is going to perform today, because India is going to bat in the second half. Crucial innings this is for Virat Kohli, and yet another record awaits. But this also depends on the player, because seeing at the performance he's delivered in the first and second ODI, his performance is also under scrutiny. So let's see how Virat Kohli also performs today, and if he can delight the fans at Sydney.
Absolutely, Deepika. Speculations are rife after his twin duck in both the games, and in Australia, in fact, are 137 for 3 after 25.5 overs. We'll leave it at that. Thank you for your inputs, Deepika. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek Mahajan from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.